Greetings fellow retro gamers and welcome to another episode of 81632-bit presents Battle of the Bits. Today we're looking at Sega's legendary arcade machine Golden Axe and the versions that were produced by Sega themselves for the Mega Drive and the Master System. Now, Golden Axe was an incredibly popular scrolling beat-em-up in the arcades released in 1989. It was released also in 1989 for the then new Sega Mega Drive and Genesis system, and then shortly afterwards in early 1990 for the Sega Master System. Now, obviously these were arcade to home ports, so there are going to be some concessions made, but today we're going to have a look and see which of the two versions is indeed the better one. So, without further ado, let's get started with Golden Axe for the Mega Drive and Genesis. So, here we are with the version for Sega's 16-bit console, the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis for our American cousins. As you can see, you get a nice little intro screen there. It looks very arcade-like, not quite the same as the arcade, but darn close when you look at it. And it sounds pretty good too. Now, tracked mode there, didn't want that again, so we're just going straight into the arcade mode here. Obviously you have a choice of 3 characters. For the sake of simplicity, we're just sticking with the legendary Axe Battler, and as you can see, this is a pretty good looking early period Mega Drive game. You know, it looks like a damn close facsimile of the game Golden Axe in the arcade. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Golden Axe. I have real issues with some of the little gameplay quirks it uses, especially in the home ports. I mean, one thing you'll notice, you always seem to get attacked by bad guys in pairs and they will always try and bracket you, so there is one either side of you. Obviously, in an arcade, this is a really cheap and easy ploy to just get you to keep putting more money in by taking lives off you quickly and cheaply. I don't think it was needed for the home ports. I think they could have tweaked that. And you've just seen one of the little goblin gnomes there who give you power-ups to your magic, which we'll see shortly, because yes, I'm sick of it. As you can see, Axe uses fire magic. There's different levels to the magic that you can access, depending on how many bottles you have collected. It has slightly different effects each time you upgrade the level. Now, this is another thing Golden Axe was saying, so it's ride on creatures. They do add an element of fun to the gameplay, which does take it a little bit out of the standard beat 'em up frame that was already becoming pretty much the norm at this point, even though we weren't that far removed from what you would call was the first modern scrolling beat 'em up in terms of gameplay, which was of course Double Dragon. Now, I have to say, despite the fact that I don't like Golden Axe, I find this Mega Drive versions play really well. It's a very, very good facsimile of the arcade machine. Obviously it's not perfect, the animation's a little jerkier, it's not quite as smooth and fast, but it plays a decent game of Golden Axe. So, in a second, we'll get to the Master System version and see just how well or not that version of the game does. So, here we are on Sega's 8-bit machine, and you can see straight away cutbacks have been made. First off, we don't get the little arcade track sequence. You don't even get to choose characters, all you have is Axe. But, as you can see, it's still recognisably Golden Axe, right down to the bad guys bracketing you. And yeah, it looks pretty good, to be fair. You know, the sprites are recognisable. As you can see, the magic does cause all the backdrops to disappear because of the limitations of the system, but this is very definitely and very obviously Golden Axe. As I said, it looks pretty good. By 1990, coders had pretty well got the hang of the Master System at this point and were producing games which were a significant step up from the earlier titles on the system. This is a prime example of that. A quite substantial arcade machine squeezed down into Sega's little 8-bit wonder. Now obviously it doesn't quite sound as good. That's the problem with just using the built-in sound chip on the Master System and not the FM add-on, which was never available outside Japan anyway. And it's fair to say that there are other cutbacks that have been made. You noticed that we didn't have the little section level there with the little gnome. Instead we go straight to fighting these two bad guys. Well, cutbacks have to be made. It's a weaker system, it has less memory available, the cartridges are smaller. You do get this second bit with the little gnome things, which is actually far easier to get the bottles from them on because they stick to one plane of movement each rather than running up and down and jumping all around. You still have the different levels to the magic like in the arcade and Mega Drive versions. And to be fair, yeah, as I said, this is a damn good conversion, especially given the limitations of the machine. I enjoy it. To me, it actually feels a touch more difficult than the Mega Drive version. That may be due to the fact that obviously it's a slightly slower pace again. The animation isn't as smooth, and it does feel like there's a little bit of a delay between your action and the response on screen. But overall, it's not a bad conversion. So yeah, Golden Axe for the Master System. It's a good little version for a good little machine. So, which version's going to win this battle of the bits? Well, to be completely honest, I have to give it to the Mega Drive version. It's just closer to the arcade original, but it's a near-run thing. The Master System version really does put up a great fight and shows just what could be done on the system with skilled coders. Released in 1988, Altered Beast was a side-scrolling beat-em-up from Sega running on its System 16 hardware and proved to be incredibly popular with its setting of ancient Greek mythology. Now, naturally, as a machine built around the System 16 hardware, this meant Sega were going to convert this to their newly released Mega Drive platform, which used some of the same hardware within itself, such as the Motorola 68000 CPU. However, with the Sega Master System still being a massively popular machine in Europe and launching in the US, there was also going to be a version of the game for that. Now, today we're going to take a look at both of these versions and see just how well they converted from one powerful piece of hardware kit such as the System 16 to the less powerful but still quite powerful Mega Drive hardware and the significantly less powerful 8-bit Z80 based Master System hardware. So here we go with episode 2 of Battle of the Bits and Sega's Altered Beast. So first off, let's look at the Sega Mega Drive version. Now this was considered to be a big enough deal to be the packing title with the Mega Drive and Genesis when released in the West initially, in the pre-Sonic the Hedgehog days. And, well, as you can see, it looks pretty decent. Yes, it's missing the full intro sequence from the arcade, and you do get the sample speech with its wonderful level of lisping, because it does command you to rise from your grave. But as you can see here, it's a reasonably decent looking game. It's a very early Mega Drive title, so it perhaps doesn't look as good as some later ones, but everything here is pretty smooth. The scrolling's relatively smooth, the graphics are nice and big and smoothly animated. It looks the part. Yes, everything compared to the arcade game is a little bit different. The graphics aren't quite as chunky and as detailed, the sound isn't as good, but for what it is, this 16-bit version is really rather good, and it's certainly better than any of the other 16-bit versions. You get the wonderful transformation cinematics, but it is certainly much, much better than, say, the Amiga or Atari ST versions, which were probably the only comparable versions in terms of power, being based again around that similar 68,000 hardware. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm any good at this game as usual. Most people who watch this channel know I'm pretty crap at most games. But here you have it. It's a decent looking game. Everything looks and plays quite smoothly, but you know, it is a simple game at its heart. And I'm probably going to die here any second. In fact, I know I am, because I recorded this footage and I thought to myself, let's try and get to level 2. Come on. No. But I like it. As a packing game, you can see why it was done. It was a chance to show off the power of the new 16-bit hardware compared to its main competitor at the time, which was the Nintendo Entertainment System. And in that respect, it certainly achieves its aims. And now we move on to the Master System version. Now, I'm not going to lie here. This is a significant downgrade, excuse me, on the arcade version. It does still look pretty decent, especially in stills. However, when you compare it to the Mega Drive version, it's slow, it's clunky, it's jerky. Yes, the graphics aren't as detailed, although they do look pretty good. Although, whether it's a case of the Master System was being pushed too hard or the programmers just weren't very good at optimization, I don't know. There are certainly games on the Master System that look better than this and are smoother than this. Now, that's not to say it's all bad. This is by far the best 8-bit version of the game out there, in my opinion, easily surpassing the similarly spec'd versions from the Sinclair Spectrum, the Amstrad CPC and the Commodore 64. And you know, for the Master System, there's some quite big sprite work going on here. But what I find is, with it being so much slower and clunkier, it doesn't respond as well. And that actually makes the game harder, in my opinion, because you don't have the responsiveness, so you do take more hits from the enemies, as you can see in my playing it of here. I mean, it does retain some nice features, such as the enemies literally exploding into component pieces, but it's not brilliant. And you can see a few examples of where the sprite swapping's gone, but you do get versions of the transformation cinematics, something that was often missing from ports of games like this. Now, obviously, once you're fully powered up here like this, the game suddenly becomes a lot easier because you have the more powerful attacks. But it's still a painful experience to play, especially if you were a Master System owner who had a friend who had a Mega Drive and you put this next to their 16-bit conversion. Their version pretty much looked like an arcade machine. Your version looked like what it was, a cutback port of a powerful piece of arcade hardware running on a very, very much more restricted system. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a reasonably fun game to play once you can get used to the control lag and the issues surrounding that, but it's just, it doesn't have the fluidity of its big brother. You know, this is one battle of the bits where, unlike, say, like the previous Mortal Kombat 2 episode, where I could look at it and go, you know what, it's amazing that they've done this on this system. This is one where the 16-bit version easily takes the win.